Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Disappearance of Josef Mengele, a novel, by Olivier Guez, translated by Georges de Chambéry, narrated by Michael Langan. You who wronged a simple man, bursting into laughter at the crime, do not feel safe. The poet remembers. Czesław Miłosz. Part 1. The Pasha. Le bonheur n'est qui danse qui agite, et il n'y a que le crime qui agite. La vertu n'est pour jamais conduire à bonheur. Marquis de Sade. 1. The North King cuts through the river's muddy water. Its passengers have been up on deck since dawn, scanning the horizon. As shipyard cranes and harbour warehouses become visible through the mist, some Germans sing a military song. Italians make the sign of the cross. Jews pray. Despite the drizzle, couples kiss. The ship has arrived in Buenos Aires after a 3-week crossing. Helmut Gregor is pensive as he leans against the rail, alone. He'd been hoping that some big shot from the secret police would be there to meet him, enabling him to avoid the hassle of customs. In Genoa, where he embarked, Gregor had begged Kurt to grant him this favor. He'd introduced himself as a scientist, a high-level geneticist, and offered money. Gregor has a lot of money, but the smuggler waved away the bribe with a smile. Such privileges were reserved for the biggest fish, for dignitaries of the old regime. There was little chance they would be bestowed on a mere SS captain. Still, Gregor could count on him. He would send a telegram to Buenos Aires. Kurt took the money, but the secret policeman never showed up. So Gregor waits patiently with the other refugees in the vast Argentinian customs hall. He keeps a tight grip on his 2 suitcases, a big one and a small one, as he sizes up the nameless European exiles, some elegant, others dishevelled, who stand in long lines. Gregor avoided them during the crossing, preferring to watch the ocean and the stars, or to read German poetry in his cabin. But mostly, he spent his time thinking about the past 4 years of his life since leaving Poland in a panic in January 1945, when he disguised himself as a Wehrmacht soldier to escape the clutches of the Red Army. The few weeks interned in an American POW camp, his release, thanks to false papers in the name of Fritz Ullmann, the 3 years spent in hiding on a pretty Bavarian farm near his hometown of Günzburg, where, his name changed now to Fritz Hollmann, he cut hay and sorted potatoes. Then his escape at Easter, 2 months ago, crossing the Dolomites via forest paths to arrive in South Tyrol, Italy, where he became Helmut Gregor, and finally Genoa, where Kurt the Bandit smoothed his emigration with the Italian and Argentinian authorities. 2. The fugitive hands an International Red Cross travel document to the customs officer, along with a landing card and an entry visa. Helmut Gregor, height 1.74 meters, green-brown eyes. DOB 6th of August 1911, in Termeno, or Dramen in German, municipality of South Tyrol. German citizen of Italian nationality. Religion Catholic. Profession mechanic. Address in Buenos Aires, 2460 Arenales Street, Florida District, care of Gerard Malbronk. The customs officer inspects the luggage, the meticulously folded clothes, the portrait of a delicate blonde woman, the books and opera records. He pulls a face when he discovers the contents of the smaller case. Hypodermic syringes, notebooks and anatomical drawings, blood samples, cell fragments. Odd for a mechanic. He calls the port doctor. Gregor shudders. He'd taken an insane risk hanging on to the incriminating briefcase, the precious result of lifelong research which he had taken with him when leaving hurriedly from his Polish assignment. Had the Soviets arrested him with the case in his possession, he would have been put to death without trial. Escaping the great German debacle of spring 1945 and heading west, he'd entrusted it to a sympathetic nurse he'd met in eastern Germany, in the Soviet zone, during a mad expedition after he was liberated from the American camp and spent 3 weeks on the road. After retrieving it, he passed it on to Hans Zittelmeier, his childhood friend and the confidant of his industrialist father. They'd met regularly in the woods around the farm where he'd holed up for 3 years. Gregor would not have left Europe without his briefcase. Zittelmeier gave it back to him before he left Italy, with a big envelope of cash inside. And now, a fool with dirty fingernails is doing all he can to turn everything belly up, thinks Gregor, as the port doctor inspects the samples and the notes in his cramped Gothic script. The doctor, completely baffled, asks questions in Spanish, and the mechanic explains in German that he is an amateur biologist. The two men look at each other, and the doctor, who wants to eat lunch, signals to the customs officer that he can let Gregor through. On 22nd of June 1949, Helmut Gregor finds sanctuary in Argentina. 3. In Genoa, Kurt promised him that a German doctor would be waiting for him at the quayside to take him to Malebranche's house. But once again, it seems the fixer was telling tall tales. Gregor paces in the rain. His contact is probably stuck in traffic. He scrutinizes the wharf, the dockers at work, the families reunited and slipping away together, smiling, the piles of leather and bales of wool in the loading bays. No German doctor on the horizon. Gregor consults his watch. The siren of a factory ship wails. He is anxious, hesitant about heading for Malebranche's place, and decides it is prudent to wait. Soon he is one of the last of the North King's passengers left on the quay. 2 Calabrians, loaded like mules, suggest sharing a taxi. Gregor surprises himself by following these fleabags, but on his first day in South America, he does not want to be alone. And besides, he has nowhere to go. At the Hotel Palermo, he shares a room which has neither wash basin nor lavatory with his companions. They tease him. Gregor from South Tyrol does not speak a word of Italian. He curses his decision to go with them, but takes it on the chin, accepts some slices of garlic sausage, and falls asleep exhausted, his briefcase firmly wedged between his body and the wall, safe from the cupidity of the 2 men. Next morning, he gets going. No one answers his phone calls to Malebranche's place. He jumps into a taxi, checking the small suitcase into the left luggage facility at the train station before heading for a quiet street in the Florida district. Gregor rings the bell of a spacious neo-colonial villa. An hour later, he returns and rings again, then calls on the phone 3 more times, without success, from a cafe where he has taken refuge. Before Gregor left Genoa, Kurt gave him a second contact in Buenos Aires, Friedrich Schlottmann, a German businessman, owner of a flourishing textile company. In 1947, Schlottmann had financed the covert exfiltration of aircraft manufacturers and Air Force engineers via Scandinavia. "He is a powerful man," Kurt said. "He can help you find a job and new friends." Arriving at Sedalana HQ, Gregor demands a meeting with Schlottmann, but is told he is on leave all week. He is insistent, so a secretary takes him to the human resources manager, a German Argentine in a double-breasted suit, whose appearance he instantly dislikes. Gregor is surely a candidate for the managerial post, but this young man with his slicked-back hair offers him a very honourable workman's job, combing the wool that arrives daily from Patagonia, the standard position for newly arrived allies. Gregor pinches himself. He'd happily throttle the cur. Does he envision Gregor, the son of a good family and a doctor of anthropology and medicine, combing and cleansing sheepskins alongside Indians and Dagos, wreathed in toxic fumes for 10 hours a day in the suburbs of Buenos Aires? Gregor slams the door of the employer's office and swears that when he returns to Europe, he'll skin Kurt alive. 5. Sipping an orangeade, Gregor takes stock. Get a job. Learn 100 Spanish words every day. Track down Malbronk, a former spy in the Operation Bolivar network of the Abwehr, the Nazi counterintelligence service. Try to get along with the 2 Calabrians he is lodging with, even though he can afford a comfortable hotel. They speak only a dialect of the Italian South. He can just make out that they are fascist veterans of the conquest of Abyssinia. Soldiers will not betray him. Best keep a low profile and hold on to his precious cash. The future is uncertain, and Gregor has never been a risk-taker. Avellaneda, La Boca, Montserrat, Congreso. Staring at an unfolded map, he familiarizes himself with the topography of Buenos Aires and feels tiny next to that checkerboard of streets. An insignificant flea, this man who, not so long ago, terrorized an entire dominion. Gregor thinks of another checkerboard, of huts, gas chambers, crematoria, railways, where he spent his best years as an engineer of the human race. A forbidden city, pungent with the stench of burned flesh and hair, surrounded by watchtowers and barbed wire. He moved among the faceless shadows there, on a motorcycle, on a bicycle, in a car, like a tireless cannibal dandy, resplendent in boots, gloves, and uniform, his cap tilted rakishly. The prisoners were forbidden to look at him or speak to him. Even his SS comrades were afraid of him. On the ramp where the Jews of Europe were selected, his cohorts were drunk, but he remained sober, whistling tunes from Tosca and smiling. Never did he surrender to a single human feeling. Pity was a form of weakness. With a movement of his switch, he, the all-powerful, sealed the fate of his victims. To the left, instant death in the gas chambers. To the right, a slow death by forced labor or in his laboratory, the largest in the world, which he fed with suitable human material. Dwarfs, giants, cripples, twins. Each day when the convoys arrived. Injecting, measuring, bleeding, cutting, killing, performing autopsies. A zoo of children was at his disposal, human guinea pigs to help him uncover the secrets of twinship, to produce supermen and increase German fertility so that one day the eastern territories seized from the Slavs could be populated with peasant soldiers, the Nordic race preserved. The guardian of racial purity, the alchemist of the new man, he could look forward to a brilliant academic career and the gratitude of the victorious Reich once the war was over. Blood and soil, his burning ambition, the grand design of his supreme leader, Heinrich Himmler. Auschwitz, May 1943 to January 1945. Gregor is the angel of death. Dr. Josef Mengele. 6. His first southern winter. Buenos Aires is enveloped in mist and torrential rain, and Gregor lies in bed, depressed. He has caught a cold. Shivering under the covers, He observes cockroaches racing overhead as they emerge from a ventilation pipe. Not since the autumn of 1944 has he been in such a bad way. The Soviets were advancing across Central Europe. He knew the war was lost and could no longer sleep for nervous exhaustion. His wife, Irene, had got him back up on his feet. Arriving in Auschwitz that summer, she had shown him the first photos of their son, Rolf, born a few months earlier, and they had spent some idyllic weeks together. Despite the magnitude of his task, the arrival of 440,000 Hungarian Jews, they had enjoyed a second honeymoon. The gas chambers were working at full capacity. Irene and Josef swam in the solar. The SS burned men, women, and children alive in open-air pits. Irene and Josef picked blueberries and she made jam. Flames burst from crematorium furnaces. Irene sucked off Josef and Josef fucked Irene. More than 320,000 Hungarian Jews were exterminated in less than 8 weeks. When Josef almost collapsed at the beginning of the autumn, Irene had stood by him. They had moved into a new barracks equipped with a bath and kitchen, with Jehovah's Witnesses as servants. Gregor looks at Irene's portrait on the bedside table. The photo dates from 1936, the year they met in Leipzig. He was working at the university hospital. Irene was passing through. She had been studying the history of art in Florence. It was love at first sight for Josef. The young woman was 19 years old, blonde, with a slender body like a Cranach Venus, his feminine ideal. Gregor coughs and remembers Irene in a summer dress, hanging on his arm in Munich's English garden. Irene blissfully happy in the Opel two-door coupe, surging along the Reich's motorways on the day they got married, on the eve of war. Gregor boils with rage as he contemplates for the 1,000th time his wife's fine lips in the photo. She refused to follow him to Argentina with their little boy, refused to lead the life of a fugitive across the ocean. Mengele's name is on America's list of war criminals, and it has been cited in several trials. Truth is, she dumped him. Over the years, in the woods and inns around his Bavarian hideout, he could feel the distance between them growing. His friend Zedelmeyer, his father, and his 2 brothers, Karl and Alois, told him that, wreathed in black, Irene consoled herself with other men. To cover his back, she told the American military police he had died in action. "The bitch," Gregor groans in his hotel attic. Returning from the front, his comrades were welcomed home as heroes by their wives, while his fell in love with a shoe salesman from Freiburg im Breisgau before sending him, Gregor, across the threshold to nowhere. 7. Upstairs in the bathroom, a towel tied around his waist, Gregor admires his smooth belly, the softness of his skin, his hairless torso. He has always fussed over it. His brothers and Irene mocked his youthful narcissism, the hours spent hydrating and admiring himself, but he blesses the vanity that saved his life. When he joined the SS in 1938, he refused to have his blood group tattooed under an armpit or on his chest to meet regulatory requirements. When the Americans arrested him after the war, he passed for a humble soldier and was released after a few weeks. Gregor goes up to the mirror and examines the arches of his eyebrows, his slightly prominent forehead, his nose, his malevolent mouth, his face front on and in profile, and rolls his eyes, which switch suddenly from beguiling to steely and unsettling. This genetic engineer of the Aryan race always wondered about the origins of his mysterious name. Mengele sounded like a kind of Christmas cake or a hairy arachnid. And why were his complexion and hair so swarthy? His schoolmates in Gunzborg nicknamed him Beppo the Gypsy. Now, hiding behind a dark moustache in Buenos Aires, he looks like a Hidalgo or an Italian, a true Argentine. As he splashes eau de cologne onto himself, Gregor smiles and reveals the space between his two upper front teeth. Despite his defeat and the hardships of his escape, and the apparent defection of Malbranche, he's had the strength to fight off his fever. He still has erections. Though 38 years old and harried by life and war, he feels he has not yet lost his power of seduction. Gregor combs his hair back like William Powell in the Kennel murder case, gets dressed, and goes out. The sky is clear, the breeze from the Rio de la Plata invigorating. For some days now he has roamed Buenos Aires, the immense 9 de Julio Avenue and its obelisk, Corrientes, its cabarets and bookshops, the Barolo skyscraper and the Art Nouveau cafes of the May Avenue, the lawns of the Palermo parks covered with greasy wrappings, the teeming arteries of the town centre, the patisseries and luxurious boutiques down Florida Street. The day before, he watched the goose-stepping guards in front of Casa Rosada, the presidential palace, struck by the excitement of the onlookers around him and their respect for the military. The army is a stabilizing institution in Argentina, as it should be everywhere. Only the Germans strive to destroy their traditions with a collective guilt, he mumbles to himself in the subway on the way back to the rat hole where he is staying. There are pretty women everywhere, flowers, stray dogs, plane trees and gum trees, the smell of cigars and grilled meat, and shops better stocked than in Europe. Photos of Alfredo Di Stefano in his white and red River Plate jersey, and portraits of the tango singers Carlos Gardel and Agustin Magaldi adorn the newspaper kiosks amid engravings of the Virgin and copies of Sintonia, the magazine of the stars. Gregor climbs into a tram and vanishes into the crowds of pedestrians and cars. He does not talk to anyone. The metropolis has welcomed deserters and charlatans ever since it was founded. When he sees red-bearded Jews, the sons of Russian immigrants who fled the Tsarist pogroms at the beginning of the century, he switches pavements. He has circled in red on his street map the Villa Crespo district and Once de Septiembre Square, where Jews have set up their garment workshops. He dreads passing a spectre from Auschwitz who might unmask him. Gregor does not feel out of place. Argentina is the most developed country in Latin America, and it is booming. Since the end of the war, a devastated Europe had bought its foodstuffs. Buenos Aires is full of cinemas and theatres. The roofs are grey, the schoolchildren wear uniforms, and just as in Germany in the time of the Reich, the leader of the nation is worshipped. A duo, a bear in a military costume from an operetta, and a sparrow encased in jewels, the Redeemer and the oppressed, Juan and Evita Perón, are plastered triumphantly all over the walls of the capital city. 8. Gregor kills time reading up on their romance in the newspapers. They had met in January 1944 at a charity gala for the survivors of the earthquake that had just destroyed San Juan. The young actress, Eva Duarte, is mesmerized by Colonel Juan Domingo Perón, the strong man among the cabal of colonels in power. He is a spokesman for the voiceless, a sportsman emeritus, a conversationalist with feline eyes and Amerindian traits. He mobilizes the entire country to come to the aid of the devastated city. After the fundraiser, Perón goes on the radio show where Evita earns a meager living. At the Ministry of Labor, where he pursues his path to power, Evita is hired to work in his department. She is overwhelmed by his passion and generosity. They move in together, Evita makes declarations of loyalty and submission. Perón, my sun, my sky, my condor who flies far and high up among the peaks near God, you are my life. Perón pursues his plan of action and becomes Secretary of War and Vice President. He boosts military spending, creates an air force, makes an inflammatory radio broadcast warning of an attack by the Brazilian military, which never happens. At the end of the war, the United States puts pressure on the military junta to hold democratic elections. In September 1945, renewed conservative opposition culminates in a mass demonstration. Argentina roars. Rivalries flare between officers. The more liberal ones get rid of the nationalists, and Perón is forced to resign by his opponents in the military. He is arrested. His supporters mobilize and, led by Argentina's General Confederation of Labor, the CGT, they, the workers, unionists, and underprivileged, march to May Square in Buenos Aires, and in front of the presidential palace they call for his release and return to power. Perón marries Evita and wins the presidential election a few months later. Provincial, ambitious, and vengeful, Evita and Perón have a lot in common. He is from the desolate steppes of the Chubut region, his father a volatile loser, his mother unfaithful. She is the illegitimate daughter of a bigamous wealthy rancher. In 1911, when the 16-year-old Perón joins the military cadets, Evita is not yet born. Posted to Parana, the Andes, Misiones province, the young soldier explores Argentina's underbelly and sees peons crushed by overwork, slaughterhouse employees in Buenos Aires more mistreated than the beasts that have their throats cut. Argentina is an affluent country, the main supplier of raw materials to Great Britain, but its wealth comes at a price. The British control the railway network. The Bank of England exploits the riches of the pampas and the vast forests of red quebrachos, which are cut down for use in the tanning industry. The big landowners hold all the power and throw lavish parties. In Buenos Aires there are shacks and mansions in the same street. The Teatro Colón standing close to the brothels of La Boca. The 1929 stock market crash has a devastating effect on Argentina. Unemployed and homeless people proliferate. Strikes paralyze the country. Anarchist gangs roam the countryside. Perón contains his impatience with difficulty. Indifferent to the misfortunes of their fellow citizens, corrupt leaders pursue austerity. They advocate democracy, but engage in electoral fraud. The 1930s. Opium dens, financial scandals, ether and cocaine, armed robbery. In the middle of this infamous decade, a teenage Evita arrives in Buenos Aires to become an actress. Unscrupulous producers take advantage of the naive and disempowered young woman. Secretly, she seethes. Never will she forgive or forget. She dreams of dragging the traitors out of their filthy lairs, of beheading the sugar barons and cattle ranchers connected to those foreign capitalists who trample on her humble kind. Evita is even more fanatical and passionate than Perón. By 1946, Juan and Eva Perón are the masters of Argentina, backed by the church, the military, the nationalists, and the proletariat. The hour of the sword has come. 9. The Perons want to liberate Argentina and announce an aesthetic and industrial revolution, a proletarian regime. President Perón thunders and rants on the radio, gesticulates and brags in front of the hypnotized masses, promising the end of humiliation and dependency and a splendiferous life, a new beginning. He is their savior. Peronist justicialism will guarantee Argentina a place in the history books. Perón is the first politician to shake up Argentina's colonial agricultural society. As the secretary...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?